The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every creak of the floorboard sound louder than it really is. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through emails I didn't care about. The tension from this morning's argument still hung in the air like an invisible fog. She had stormed out earlier, her words sharp and precise, leaving me wondering how something so small could explode into a fight. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw her text, "Don't call me." I stared at it for a moment, letting the words sink in. Part of me wanted to apologize immediately, to call her and smooth things over. But another part, a stubborn, mischievous part, sensed an opportunity for a little playful revenge. I leaned back, letting out a slow breath, trying to convince myself I was calm, but my thumb hovered over the keyboard, itching to type something sharp, something that would get under her skin just a little. I could feel the quiet of the apartment pressing in, amplifying every thought, every flicker of irritation and amusement that passed through me. I stared at her message a little longer than necessary, my mind racing with a mix of irritation and amusement. "Don't call me," she had written. That simple line, so calm yet loaded with meaning, felt like a challenge. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, and before reason could step in, I typed back, almost on impulse, "Don't come home." I hit send and immediately leaned back, trying to measure the weight of what I'd just done. Part of me expected her to ignore it, maybe even laugh later. But another part, the part that had learned never to underestimate her, braced for the storm. There was a thrill in it, though a tiny spark of rebellion that made the silence in the apartment feel electric. I set the phone down and ran my hands over my face, half smiling, half worried. 15 minutes of quiet could either be a peaceful pause or the calm before a hurricane. I tried to distract myself, flipping through channels and sipping my coffee, but every few seconds my eyes flicked back to the phone. The air seemed heavier now, as if it were waiting for her reaction. And deep down, I knew it was coming fast, loud, and impossible to ignore. I tried to tell myself 15 minutes wasn't long, that she might just be busy or cooling off. But the quiet was impossible to ignore. Every tick of the clock sounded louder than it should, like it was counting down to something inevitable. I found myself checking the phone every 30 seconds, half expecting it to explode with notifications. I paced the small living room, my mind replaying the morning argument in a loop. How had a conversation about groceries turned into this? How had a minor disagreement spiraled into a full-blown standoff? Each thought only made the silence feel heavier. Then I imagined her reaction, her phone in hand, her eyes narrowing as she read my text, a mix of shock, anger, and maybe even amusement crossing her face. The picture made my stomach twist. I could practically hear her muttering under her breath, counting the seconds until she could call or storm through the door. I tried to distract myself flipping channels, pretending to focus on work emails, but every ping in my imagination made my pulse jump. 15 minutes stretched like an eternity. I started to laugh at myself, the ridiculousness of it all, but even the laugh felt nervous, tight, laced with anticipation. Somewhere deep down, I knew the peace wasn't coming. Not today. The calm was only temporary, a fragile pause before the storm I had invited with a single, impulsive text. The first missed call came almost immediately, a single notification blinking on my phone. I picked it up, heart thumping, only to see her name flashing across the screen with that familiar intensity that always made my stomach tighten. I didn't answer. Not yet. Then another, and another. Each buzz and chime made my pulse spike a little higher, my hand hovering over the phone, unsure whether to surrender or hold my ground. 10 calls. 15. I started counting silently, trying to make sense of the sudden onslaught. 65 missed calls. 65. My thumb shook slightly as I scrolled through the list, disbelief slowly giving way to panic. I tried calling her back once, twice, but each time it went straight to voicemail. I imagined her yelling into the phone, a mixture of fury and frustration, pacing around the apartment or maybe the parking lot, wondering what kind of madness had possessed me to send that text. I felt my own frustration start to mix with a creeping guilt. Maybe I had pushed too far this time. Maybe this wasn't just playful teasing anymore. My mind raced through the morning argument, replaying her words, her expression, every small detail. I sat down hard on the couch, phone clutched in my hand, like it could save me or ruin me. Each notification felt like a small explosion in my chest. The quiet that had once felt so electric now seemed cruel, a countdown to confrontation. I couldn't imagine what would happen next, only that it would be loud, messy, and impossible to ignore. And just like that, the playful tension I had hoped for had transformed into a full-blown storm, one I wasn't sure I was ready to survive. As I sat there, phone still clutched in my hand, my mind drifted back to the earlier argument. It had started so innocently, over something trivial, what to have for dinner, whose turn it was to run errands, but somehow it had spiraled into something much bigger. Words had been exchanged, sharp and pointed, each one carrying more weight than the last. I remembered the look in her eyes, equal parts frustration and hurt, and the way she had walked out of the apartment without a word. That small gesture had felt monumental, like she was declaring her independence and daring me to react. I could see her pacing the sidewalk outside, phone in hand, calculating the perfect response. It wasn't just the argument itself. It was everything that had built up over the last few weeks. Missed appointments, forgotten promises, little annoyances stacking up silently until they erupted. We both had our pride, our stubborn streaks, and sometimes it seemed like we were competing to see who could dig their heels in harder. And yet, beneath all that tension, there was always the undercurrent of love, the unspoken bond that made each fight feel both unbearable and necessary. I knew she was just as conflicted as I was, just as unwilling to back down, and that thought both comforted and terrified me. Looking back, it became clear that the text exchange wasn't really about dinner or errands. It was about the friction that had been quietly building, waiting for the perfect spark to ignite. And I had just provided that spark, maybe more recklessly than either of us had imagined. I couldn't sit still. My emotions were a tangled mess: pride, guilt, fear, and strange, stubborn amusement, all jostling for attention. Every missed call and text notification made my chest tighten, my mind spinning through scenarios both terrifying and ridiculous. Should I ignore her and let her cool off, or call her back and face the storm head-on? I imagined her standing outside, phone in hand, her expression unreadable. Was she angry, hurt, laughing at me behind my back? Each possibility sent a new wave of tension through me. I felt foolish for thinking this little text game would be harmless, for underestimating how quickly she could react. And yet, part of me couldn't help but smile at the chaos I had created. It was a weird, twisted thrill to watch the consequences of a single impulsive action unfold. I scolded myself silently, heart racing, while secretly admiring the power of that small, careless text. I leaned back on the couch, gripping my phone as if it could somehow protect me. The anticipation was almost unbearable, each passing second stretching longer than the last. I knew the storm wasn't over. It was coming louder and faster than I could imagine. And deep down, I realized that whatever happened next, I wouldn't forget these 15 minutes for a long, long time. The front door finally opened, and there she was, arms crossed, eyebrows arched, phone still in hand. Her glare could have melted steel, but there was a flicker of amusement lurking beneath the surface. I stood frozen, unsure whether to apologize, explain, or just run for cover. 15 minutes, 65 missed calls, and you still think this is funny? She said, voice sharp but slightly trembling with laughter. Maybe I miscalculated. I admitted, raising my hands in mock surrender. It seemed funnier in my head. Her expression softened slightly, but the edge of irritation remained. You know I don't play games like this, she said, shaking her head. Yet somehow you do. I stepped closer, feeling the tension shift into something warmer. Okay. I admitted I went too far. You were right, and I was, me, I said, managing a sheepish grin. She sighed, her eyes rolling, but the corners of her mouth twitched. You're impossible, she said. Then, almost reluctantly, she leaned in and kissed my cheek. In that moment, the storm passed as quickly as it had come. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind laughter, relief, and the quiet understanding that this chaotic little game was just part of who we were, tangled, stubborn, and stubbornly in love. We finally collapsed onto the couch together, the the tension from the last 15 minutes dissolving into laughter. My phone lay between us, its screen still littered with missed calls, a silent testament to my impulsive streak. 65 missed calls, she said, shaking her head. I think you owe me an apology and maybe a medal for surviving me. I chuckled, nudging her shoulder. Or maybe I deserve a medal for teaching your patience. She laughed, a sound that made the apartment feel lighter, warmer. For a moment, all the anger, the pride, the tension had seemed trivial, almost funny in hindsight. I glanced at the phone again, then at her, and realized something simple. Marriage was a mix of chaos, stubbornness, and tiny victories. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was worth the storm to end up laughing together on the couch. Phones forgotten, hearts still stubbornly connected.